Okay, anything else? All right, one of the things that I try to do is give you a story. Okay, you always need a good story. You need an illustration for a sermon. You got a class. You got to teach something. You get called on at the last minute to do something. You got to have a story. So I collect stories, and what I try to do is give them away, and you use them however you want to use them. Okay. So December the 25th, 1941. That's Christmas Day, yes, but what had just taken place earlier in December of 1941 that impacted America? Pearl Harbor. December the 6th, Pearl Harbor was bombed, right? Okay, so North Platt, Nebraska. Today, North Platt, Nebraska is a town of about 2,500 people or so, and it's really kind of an unimportant town. But when the railroad industry was really going big, North Platt, Nebraska was an important town because it was a switching station. So if you were riding the train from East Coast to West Coast, you went through North Platt, Nebraska. If you were going West Coast to East Coast, you went through North Platt, Nebraska, just the way it was. And so it's Christmas Day, December 25th, 1941. America has just declared war against Japan. Word spreads around town between the ladies that evening a troop train of Nebraska boys that had been drafted for the war going to come through. And some of the women start to talk, and they said, well, you know, we've got all this cakes and cookies and pies and stuff already cooked. We ought to go down there and take some of, we always got extra, right? Take it down there and give it to the boys. After all, they're shipping off the war, and who knows if they'll come back. And so a group of ladies did that. They took extras of their sweets and went down to meet the train. The train pulls in. It's going to be there for 8 to 10 minutes for them to do what they had to do. So they get up on the train, but they notice the uniforms. They're not Nebraska boys. They're Kansas boys. And one woman said, well, I'm not going to do this. I thought it was Nebraska boys. And one woman said, well, I'm not taking my cookies home. So she starts handing out her cookies, and other women say, okay, fine. So they hand out their cookies and cakes and pies and all that sort of stuff. And they come down, and they're standing on the platform of the train, and the boys are pulling off, and they're waving, and they're eating that stuff, and they're smiling, and they're blowing kisses, and they're saying thank you. And one of the women said, well, that's a good feeling, isn't it? And they said, yeah. You know, she said, we could do this again. Standing off to the side of them was a station master, and he heard what they said. And he said, well, you know, there's another train coming in at 10 o'clock in the morning. And one of the ladies said, let's meet it. And they did. They met every troop train from December the 25th, 1941 to April the 1st, 1946. 6 million servicemen and women came through North Platt, Nebraska. And that group of ladies, with an ever-growing group of recruited volunteers to help them, met every train. And a lot of people got cakes and cookies and pies. And for some of the boys, it was to sew on a button or to get a quick haircut or to help write what might be a last letter home. 6 million men and women. You think about that. I heard that story from a retired lieutenant colonel who said he told that at a conference he was speaking at. He told it on Friday night, just like I told it to you. He said the next morning he had to do the second half of what he was supposed to do. And he was getting ready to speak, and a young girl came running up to him, and she said, Colonel, do you remember that story you told last night about North Platt, Nebraska? And he said, well, sure, I remember the story. And she said, well, my grandfather served in World War II. My grandfather was in the South Pacific, and my grandfather's memory started to fade. And he seems to remember things from long ago more than he does now. And we're always looking for things to make connections. And when you told that story last night, the first thing I thought of was, I wonder if my grandfather knows about that. And so I went home from the session last night, and I called him, and it was a good day. He knew my voice. I said, Grandpa, have you ever heard place called North Platt, Nebraska? She said he got quiet. He said, yeah. Went to there twice, coming and going. And he said, honey, I can't tell you how many times we'd be in foxholes pinned down at night waiting on the sun to come up for the battle to engage again, and wondering if we would live through the next day. And somewhere in the darkness, someone to break the boredom and the stress wouldn't call out, man, what I wouldn't give to be in North Platt, Nebraska right now. It's a good story. I've told, that's one of my favorite stories. I've told that I can't tell you how many times. Every year, my wife and I go out to a congregation, former Heritage student who is like family to us, just south of St. Louis in Missouri. I was out there a few years ago, and she did a ladies' day on Saturday, and I spoke twice Sunday morning, and then they had a meal following. My young man, who is like our family, leans over to me at the end of the meal and says, by the way, the others have decided just to wrap this up. Just do a devotional and we'll finish up. Spur of the moment. I know. I'll tell the North Platt, Nebraska story. And I did. And I told it there just like I've told it to you. And earlier that day, I had met one of their members, a guy named Quincy. He was in his 90s. He was using a wheelchair for mobility. And Quincy talked about serving in World War II. And Quincy talked about serving in the South Pacific. And so as I told that story, I made contact with Quincy in the back, and I took a chance and I said, Quincy, you ever heard of North Platt, Nebraska? He said, yeah. Went through there twice, coming and going. If I live to be 100, I'll never forget what happened next. The tears began to well up in his eyes. The tears began to come down. 90-something-year-old man. And he said, and the cookies were lemon. I can still taste them today. Now you think about that. 6 million servicemen and women were given a little taste of home. A young girl was able to connect with a grandfather whose mind was beginning to slip, and a man in his 90s could still taste the cookies. Why? Really, all because one lady said, I'm not taking my cookies home. We never know. We never know the small things that we do in the moment every day that can have an impact on untold numbers of people for untold generations. And so, between now and next week, I encourage you, every day, don't take your cookies home. Give away what you got. A hug, a smile, a handshake, a kind word. Give it away. You never know the impact it will have. And as you go about doing that, for those of you out there, you go about doing that, you remember this, that this old fellow right here loves you. I believe in you. I am praying for you. And I cannot wait to see all that God is going to do through you. God bless you. Y'all have a good rest of your week. I hope to see you next week, okay?